the law office for the last couple of days. In fact, the last couple of weeks. July is supposed to be a slower month. It hasn't exactly been all that slow, at least not yet. Um, Anavia, who is our new office assistant, is out on maternity leave a little sooner than we expected, not because she was giving birth, but the doctors said, stay home. And when the doctors stay home, you stay home. So we were without her for a little bit, and Kiera already had a trip planned. So staffing the office today, it was just me and Klaus. So I had a lot of work to do, and Klaus always just wanted to help. So he was trying to get in there while I was doing work for most of the day. So that was kind of interesting to see. We've also had I was the one answering the phones, and a lot of people seem to be a little shocked at that. I do know how to answer the phones. It's just I'm happy when Kiera and Anavi are able to do that for us. I was actually really looking forward to today's topic on legacies. So we're just going to give it a few minutes before I start to get into that. Let's see, Durham Bulls update. Yeah, they're finally back in town and playing a home game tomorrow. They and everything else with professional baseball, they always there's no games for the All-Star game, no other games, but also the day before and the day after for some reason. So the Bulls have a weekend homestand and then they have another week. So it's going to be good to get back to the stadium and see how everything's going. All right, I am still seeing 6:29. So we are still a little bit ahead of schedule. I hope everybody is having a great summer. They're not getting sick. Just heard the president ended up getting COVID while, of all things, flying into Rhode Island and going to Massachusetts. So Rhode Island, my old, the state where I grew up. I can't even really say it's my home state anymore, just because it's been so long since I've lived there. I've lived in North Carolina now for the majority of my life. So, all right. And yeah, we're actually going to take a trip up there pretty soon, see the family while the weather's good. Yeah, we go up at Thanksgiving time, but Thanksgiving time isn't nice beach weather like it is up in, July and August up in Rhode Island. Right. So I'm seeing 6:30, but I'm still going to give it a couple of minutes for people to get in. It had a little bit of rain today, and I was told that it was, oh yeah, it's really hot out there, and we're having a heat wave. And well, I was in the office all day, so Klaus and I didn't have any issues with the heat, so that was good. All right. Well, I'm seeing 6:31, so I'm at least going to get started on the preliminary stuff before I really get into the content itself. Where I really started thinking about legacies, uh, and it's something other than what we leave behind financially and money wise. There's a lot of things that we do, and we may not even think about it, that can really impact somebody's life. And that's sort of a legacy that we're giving too. And I was really thinking about this. Unfortunately, my last trip to Rhode Island was, I think it was like a 14-hour trip up on a Friday to attend the funeral of, my good friend and best man at my wedding. His father passed on after a kind of long battle um, with dementia and just a lot of other issues. I don't want to get too deeply into that, but they had that Saturday all day. We got to talk. We got to see everybody that we hadn't seen, and it was terrible that it was because of a funeral. But really started thinking both on the trip up that whole day and on the whole way back. that there are some powerful lessons that people end up teaching us that impact our lives, and we don't even really think about it. And then if you start thinking about that, you realize you are having a powerful impact on other people's lives, and you may not even know it yourself. And I'm an estate planning attorney. I work with, okay, what do we do to set up your estates, the legacy you leave behind in a financial sense. And I wanted to make, the reason I got into this was making it as smooth as possible for people and their families, because it's bad enough having to deal with somebody passing on. So for those legacies, those things that we leave behind, it's a lot more than money. So let me make sure I'm reading this disclaimer. I know I've got a lot of clients in here, but there may be others who aren't. This program is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. No attorney-client relationship exists between the user or viewer of this video slash webinar. Legal advice and perspectives among attorneys may vary, and legal advice is often different for different situations and for different people and purposes. For specific legal advice related to your particular situation, please contact an attorney in your state or jurisdiction. Copyright 2002, all rights reserved. Okay, good enough. So legacies are more than money, property, and assets. And let me just add one more thing that for this video, typically this is just exclusively shown to the community who's part of the plain English attorney community. Uh, but for this one, we are going to release it later. The exclusive part is you're the only ones allowed live. You're the only ones who are going to be allowed to have the questions in the chat. And um, but I think this might be an important one that's not going to be talking too much about legal information, that it's just a good thing to share. So, when legacies are more than money, property, and assets, it's about the lessons we learn, legacies that people pass to us, the lessons we teach that go to others, and in particular, the next generation. The work that we do can also provide examples and provide a legacy, and then the things that we build. So, good lessons we learn should be passed on. So, let me talk a little bit about that. Uh, Everybody gets lessons from close family members. I'm no different, but some of the most powerful lessons that I got, not related to money, were from my grandfathers. My grandpa Rudy, he always taught me to stand up for yourself, not just because you need to stand up for yourself, but because until you stand up to yourself for yourself, no one else is going to stand up for you. If you're not willing to do enough for yourself, then no one else is going to come along with you. And that kind of came in the context when I was telling him that somebody was kind of pushing me around a little bit of a bully. Like, you got to stand up to them. If you're not willing to do that, don't expect help from anybody else. And that was a lesson that I did kind of take to heart, and it's kind of governed my life. And I always tried to make sure too, looking at it from the other perspective, is if someone's not really willing to stand up for themselves, how can I really help them except to encourage them to stand up for themselves? And my grandpa Jerry, my father's father, yeah, he taught me that you really need to be generous and do favors for people, because you may need help someday, but only do it for those people who would do the same thing for you. If you don't think they'll do it, then they're not worth your time. They're just taking advantage of you. So, another story, you can only control how you react. And we've got a nice picture there of the grill. And that's because this lesson I would take to heart, forget a little bit, take to heart again, forget a little bit. And it's going back to my days at Papa Gino's. So, big shout out to Papa Gino's. Unfortunately, the store I used to work at was the sub stop. It was a pizza place, a kind of regional pizza chain that did sandwiches and had a grill and everything. And I ended up working there after I turned 16, and that's whole summer after, and then all the way through the rest of high school, and even a couple of summers after college or during college. I worked at Papagino's, and at some, we would always see these customers would come in and they just unload on you. And it ended up being very difficult because I would never treat anyone like that. Most of the people I know would never treat anyone like that. And it was my manager, Larry Nemero, unfortunately passed on many, many years ago. Um, he said, "You can't control what other people do. You just can't. You can only control how you react to people." And the more I think back on that, I can really identify situations where I was trying to control what other people were doing as opposed to only how I react. And it ended up being a big thing, in terms of a business model for me, working with people who want to do the type of planning, the estate planning that they want is to prevent problems from happening. I put together educational materials. We've got the courses up. We've got my book, Estate Planning Basics, and that's part of the process that I put together is to give that information. If you want to be the type of client that I want to work with, the kind who is going to want to be able to avoid problems for their families, that's where I want to be. That's what I want to do. So, helping people do that, having this process would end up screening out people who weren't serious. And I ended up not having to fight with people who were like, well, you need to convince me that I need to avoid probate. And it's like, well, wait a minute. That's not really my job. If what you want is to use a will, then that's fine. I'll help you do that. Not what I'd prefer, not what I think your family's going to value the most after you're gone, but we're happy to help you do that. But we're not going to argue with you about whether or not you need a revocable living trust. You kind of need to come to that conclusion yourself. And that kind of gets me into, how, that lesson was about how I built my business. Now, how did I end up getting involved with doing all of this planning? Well, that's something that we're going to talk about when I get to what we work on. All right. So, that's all really kind of the lessons we learn. So you can only control how you react. So the lessons that we teach. Now, this is something that I've done a lot of. Some of you may know I used to work extensively with a volunteer service leadership organization in colleges. I'm not going to mention it, the exact organization, but I ended up doing a lot as an advisor to the group, but helping them focus on becoming the best, not just student leaders, but community leaders that they can. Help them get organized, help them establish goals. And I even developed this really kind of comprehensive strategic planning course that covers a whole weekend designed for not just student leadership, but nonprofits in general could get an awful lot of this. So, how we teach these lessons became important because it wasn't focused on just go out and here's the information and you're going to learn this information. It's going to go into your head and suddenly you're going to become this great leader. It's not how it worked. When we put together this program, it was about The leadership of first the club, their club officers and board members and their committee chairs, and coming up with a vision statement, a mission statement. And from there, you can put together your goals and decide on your goals. And then what are the things we're going to do in order to help achieve those goals? What are the events? How many service projects are you going to do? How many fundraisers are you going to do? How many socials are you going to do? Pull out the calendar. We're going to plan for the whole year. You can always change things. So we went through this whole thing, and it took a whole weekend because it wasn't just telling them, here's what you need to do. We sat down and we did it. We spent that whole weekend together from a Friday night all the way through the afternoon on a Sunday. And we just kind of did this every year with, when I was on the district board, we did this for all the clubs in the district. And then it was usually about 2, maybe 3 weeks later, the district board members came in. They did the same thing for the district, and they had copies of all of those clubs' strategic plans so that they could say, here's what our clubs want to focus on. And that's really the way it should work. Now, one person, her name is Catherine. I'm not going to give her last name. She went through this like everyone else. She did the work, she understood. They put together the strategic plan, and then really I think it was only like a couple of days after we were done, she ended up heading back home to New Jersey for the summer and started an internship. Okay. So she gets in, it's a group of 15 interns. It was a large company, and she was in this division, and they were going through orientation 2 days, and they were showing her, here's what everybody needs to be doing, here's what you're going to focus on, here's about the company, here's how this works. And then there was a break, and she was talking with the two instructors. So one of the things was she had absolutely no problem going up to the people in charge and just having a conversation with them. She kind of learned that through the groups and the stuff that we did too. But they were talking about the company's new vision statement, and she said, that last point, that really sounds like it's more of a mission statement. And they stopped and they stared at her. You know this stuff? And she said, oh, yeah, I did. We just did this for my, this community club that I work with in the district. So we just went through all of this stuff. And what you were saying sounds more like it should be part of a mission statement as opposed to a vision statement. And they just kind of looked at each other and they said, well, I guess I could see that. And they talked for a bit, and then they went back to whatever they were doing. Next morning, she comes in and they call her into an office. And she's like, oh my gosh, am I getting fired already? They put her in an office and they said, this is your office. You're in charge of the other 14 interns. She got a promotion on her second day because she understood that. I can't tell you how happy I was that the stuff that I was teaching made an actual impact on her life. There have been a lot of other students out there. If you take the time to show how to do things and really walk through it, it sticks. There's another little more recent person. Her whole job in the field she wanted to go in is around strategic planning, and we went through all of this with her as well. So, yeah, how we end up teaching these lessons can have a huge impact on what we're leaving behind, the legacy we have. Right? The work we do, what we work on, whether as an occupation or outside, it really does say a lot about you. So, I've been in estate planning since I started as an attorney. I don't necessarily want to say how many years it's been, but let's just say it's definitely more than 2 decades. So I kind of got into estate planning mainly because of what happened after my grandfather passed on. Now that was actually a pretty big deal for me in my life, it was the first grandparent that I lost. It was that summer right after I finished undergrad, but before I went away to law school. And in fact, it was like less than 2 weeks before I had to get in the car and drive away that he passed on and we had the funeral and everything. And it really did hit me because I learned a lot from him. And I kind of promised myself when I go into law school, I'm going to take a lot of the lessons he taught me. And I think I have. Not just the recipe for making meatballs and doing the Italian dinners like he used to do it, but a lot of other things too. But the thing is, my second day of law school, my grandmother called me, the one my grandma Mary, Granny, we called her. She was having legal questions because there was something wrong with probate. There was something about the title to the house, it wasn't right. And she wanted to ask me questions because she didn't understand what the attorney who was helping her was telling her, not fully. And the thing is, I kept getting these phone calls from her, and I kept trying to run around the library and find out what was going on. I didn't know. I mean, I had just started law school. However, this kept going on and on and on. And suddenly it's a year and a half later. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is still going on. And she still has questions and this still isn't done. And she said something that just really kind of hit me. And it was that problem that made me say, yeah, this is what I want to work on to help other people, have it be part of my legacy. Is I don't feel like my house is mine until this is done. She just had this really bad feeling, this uneasiness that she didn't really own her own home, even though they had paid it off and lived there for many years. She just didn't feel like it was hers because of all of this mess. And that was part of what I wanted to do when I went into estate planning, is to help people avoid their families having to feel like that. So that's a reason why I do what I do as a profession. The other thing is there's a lot of stuff that I do as a volunteer now. I'm with the Triangle Young Professional Civitans, and we do a lot of stuff. That one of the projects, unfortunately, I'm going to be missing is like the Great Raleigh Cleanup, where they just clean up the roadside because there's not necessarily tax money to handle all of that stuff. So somebody just decided this is what I want. I want our neighborhoods to look better. I want our streets to look better. And so they just get out there and clean up trash, and they use volunteer muscle to do it. And I like getting out there and doing that stuff too. So it's for me, I'm always kind of conscious of here's what I want to leave behind, the lessons I want to leave behind. If I can help inspire other people to do that and continue to do that on and on, even long after I'm gone, if I can inspire somebody who inspires their kids, who inspires their kids, then I'm doing something well. I'm doing something right. And that makes me feel like I'm doing something for the community. And now we're kind of on to what we build. The things we build and last beyond us are also a legacy. And this is really kind of getting to more than it was actually not just what was built, but how it was done and how I approached it. Many years ago now, I was approached by someone from the Boys and Girls Home at Lake Waccamaw. One of their cottages needed a new roof. Now, basically, if you know anything about the Boys and Girls Home, it actually is, quote, a home for orphans. If, a lot of communities will do and have a foster care system where this area was that wasn't always 100%. And so you had these kids that needed a place to stay, and the Boys and Girls Home helped provide that, but they didn't have like 100% government funding. They certainly didn't. They were a nonprofit. They needed, I think it was like, we need $20,000 for a new roof. And he was having a lot of trouble trying to raise the money. And it was actually the Kiwanis Cottage. So he was trying to hit up that group, Kiwanis, that had sponsored the initial building all those years ago, help us out, but he was frustrated because he wasn't really getting anywhere. And I'm like, all right, you need to put a roof on the house. Tell me what you need. Oh, I need $20,000. No, 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 no. I don't think you're hearing me. What do you need in terms of materials? It's like, well, look, I've been told we need $20,000 and we can get a roofing. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Kiwanis has a lot of members. At that time, they probably had somewhere around 10,000 members. Now it's like a fraction of that, but a lot of them volunteered for Habitat for Humanity. You might have enough people with the skills already, either from their occupation or doing that kind of volunteer work with Habitat for Humanity, that they would know how to put the roof on. So, what do you need in terms of materials? And if we can get the materials, then we can try to find the volunteers to help. And so he took about a week and he got me a list of, okay, we need X number of packets of shingles, and here's the exact one, and here's the cost for each packet. Here's how many boxes of roofing nails we think we're going to need, and it's X number of dollars and cents per box, and just kind of went down through the whole list. And we needed somewhere in the neighborhood, I think it was like 3,800. Don't quote me on that, but because there's writings out there, I think it was around 3,800. So I'm at work, typed up an email, put in the name of every president and secretary in the whole of North and South Carolina in a Kiwanis club, sent the email out saying, hey, we need this to help the Boys and Girls Home. What can you sponsor? Can you sponsor a couple of packets of shingles, a couple of boxes? Tell me what you can sponsor, give the money, and we'll get it to the Boys and Girls Home so they can purchase this stuff. So part of the how I did it was not just trying to find $20,000. They actually knew exactly what their particular donation was going towards, and that helped raise money. The next day, I get into the office. I was a little late. Usually, I'm there very, very early. I got there, it was like quarter to 8, just get in, and suddenly there's a knock at my door. All right, I go and I open the door. The guy's like, are you Jeff? Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad I caught you. I'm the club secretary from ex Kiwanis Club, about an hour away, but I was going to be in Raleigh anyway. I got your email just before I went to my club meeting. Here's a check, and it was several $100s. Just showed up. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. And, took his information down so we could do the thank you notes. And I opened the emails, and there was a whole bunch of other people, of course, will help. Within about a week and a half, we had more than enough money. But on top of that, I believe it was the Hope Mills Kiwanis Club. They felt so bad that their membership was mainly seniors, that they couldn't go out and get on the roof with us, that they hired a roofing crew to work alongside of us. They put up 5 grand to pay a roofing crew. So we had scheduled 4 days in which to take the roof off, make whatever repairs to studs and whatever, put the roof on, and we had volunteers that were there ready to go. It was going to be like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. By the afternoon on Friday, we had finished. So we went out, had lunch, came back, and there's Larry, the guy who was saying, "Hey, I'm glad you could help." The one who was asking me for help initially, and he's carrying paint buckets. As long as you're here, can you help us paint the fellowship hall? All right. So a couple of people took off, but others stayed, and we helped them do some other stuff. But the whole thing is now, anytime I went down to the boys and girls home, I could look at that roof and say, I helped do that. But even more than that, I kind of showed that there's a different way of getting there, and hopefully they've been utilizing that, and other people have been utilizing that idea. It's not just about getting a dollar amount. It's not about the money piece of it. You do need to raise money, but you can do it in a way that actually has people see exactly what it's going for: shingles, nails, whatever other supplies that were needed. So yeah, we got that done. So it was something that I was very proud of, and what I was able to do and accomplish. And it was something physical that I could look at. It was something that I built. So that was a legacy that I left behind. So that's really the end of talking about legacies. We can take whatever questions you want. Go ahead and put stuff in the chat. Um, tell me if you've got questions on stuff, but uh, even more so if you want to type a little bit more, tell me about, some kind of legacy you've left behind. I can tell you that, in doing a lot of volunteer work, there's a lot of great people that I've met, and hopefully I've impacted their lives. One of my favorite things to do, most people don't know this, or if you follow me on social media, maybe you do. I actually am a credentialed minister. I only really use that to perform wedding ceremonies for family and friends. And a lot of the students I worked with at that college organization over the years, they've asked me to do the ceremonies, and I can tell you, it's a great feeling seeing them reach that point in their lives, and knowing, hey, I'm gonna be in the wedding pictures for years and years and years to come, and hopefully they'll talk well about me when they're showing stuff to their grandkids. All right, so we're in the live chat right now. Janelle's just said hello to everybody, so let us know if you've got anything that you want to add to the discussion on legacies, the things that we leave behind that aren't necessarily about money. Okay, what would you consider to be one of my biggest legacies? Wow. Okay. Well, let me talk about, again, two types of things. The legacy in helping the college students become better leaders, more impactful. That's one type of legacy, but the other one is, it is related to work. It's the fact that I'm able to help other people leave that financial part of their legacies to their family without the same problems, without the same hassles that my grandmother had to go through just to get her house. And that, I mean, that was between spouses, and that was a huge issue for her. So I actually really kind of like it. it is actually another story. It wasn't one of my plans, but it was part of the network that I'm involved with. I guess the attorney had retired. The financial advisor called up the network and they sent him over to me because the second parent had passed on, and now they were talking about settling that revocable living trust. And they said, well, okay, here's everything from the financial advisor. Here's everything was in the trust. The trust was, he says it was funded well, but I know there's going to be some stuff that we have to do. And I'm like, all right, well, the big issue, it looks like he can handle all the titling and transfers and stuff for the accounts, but you've got the house. Oh yeah, we need to do this. Well, all right, you got one of two things. It was a son and his two sisters. Son, you're the trustee. You could just sell the house out of the trust. Now that may take time. It means the trust stays open a little bit longer. Or this may be a little more complicated when it comes to the paperwork, but it means the trust is done once everything else is out of it. Go ahead, I'll do a deed moving it into your three names, and then you can turn around at your leisure and sell that house. That's what they chose to do. They came back about a week and a half later. They all kind of signed the deed, and they got that. It's like, okay, so what's next? Well, that's it. Well, I mean, that's it today. What else do we need to do? Your financial advisor told me he transferred everything over to the three of you. There's nothing else in the trust now. That's it. You're done. Talk to your accountant. Maybe there's some tax things, but on the legal end, you're done. They couldn't believe it. It was so easy for them. I saw the sigh of relief. That's something that was, it's something that I really felt good about, that their parents could pass on the legacy, the financial part of their legacy to them with such ease. That was a big thing. And that's one of the things that I enjoy. It's seeing the plans actually work out well. All right. Do we have any other questions in the chat or any other topics or anything that you see as a great legacy? Okay. It sounds so much easier than the experience my brother and I are having with probate. Yeah, unfortunately, there are a lot of issues with probate. Um, Once it gets kind of into that court system, it ends up, I hate to say it this way, but it might be true. It's a traumatic situation anyway, losing a loved one, but then kind of also being traumatized a second time by how long this can take, by the paperwork involved, by all of the other bits and pieces. And oh yeah, we need a copy of the canceled check and we can close everything out. Well, we just tried to order it from the bank. It's going to be like 2 weeks. And now they're waiting for another 2 weeks, and then something else pops up. So yeah, probate can be a very frustrating thing. So a lot of my clients, the reason they're coming to me is they want to avoid that. All right. Anything else? Otherwise, we can kind of close this out. But since this is going to the plain English attorney community, if you do end up having anything else, we do have one more question. What would I like to do that I haven't done yet? Oh gosh. That is a tough one. In terms of a legacy, I think it's right now, it's probably establishing the online courses and the online learning method. Not even just what I'm doing, but really put in place something that makes it easy for people to understand and learn this stuff. Right now, it's videos, and what I want to eventually do is incorporate some more interactive things so a lot more stuff can be done online, but on someone else's, on their schedule, to make it all that much easier. So when they do sit down with an attorney, they really do understand what's going on. I can tell you it becomes a little frustrating if I end up with people, they don't want to do the reading, they don't want to look at anything, that they're not understanding then what I'm talking about. If there's just a way where, okay, they can go through the course, but do some exercises and write things down and go one step at a time, whether it takes them a day, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, whatever's going to work for them. But if it helps them understand and put together the information they want, it's that kind of learning and interaction about all these different topics that I want to refine and get right, and hopefully will be in place for many, many years. Okay, so if we don't have any other questions, like I was saying, if there's anybody in the plain English attorney community who wants to throw out a story, take some time to write it out, uh, keep it sort of brief. What I'll do is I will go ahead and read that out and attach it at the end to this video recording before we put it out in other formats and on other platforms. All right. So I hope you found that information enjoyable, useful. I hope it got you thinking about things that you want to do or how you approach things in life. But please stay safe, plan ahead, and enjoy life. And whatever you do, make it a great day.